Let's slow this down, because this is absolutely bigger than it looks.
We have the best intelligence in the world. We're aware of who's talking to who, why they're talking to him, how accurate that information might be, how we factor that into our battle plans, our CENTCOM commander. So we know what's going on, and the president has an incredible knack at knowing how to mitigate those risks. And so the American people can rest assured their commander-in-chief is well aware of who's talking to who, and anything that shouldn't be happening, whether it's in public or back-channeled, is being confronted and confronted strongly.
The American people could therefore expect conversations with the Russians to stop this?
Well, President Trump, as people have seen, has a unique relationship with a lot of world leaders where he can get things done that other presidents, certainly Joe Biden, never could have. And through direct conversations or indirect, through him one-to-one or through his cabinet, messages definitely can be delivered.
Does this put U.S. personnel in any more danger than they otherwise would be?
Well,
the Russian involvement.
No one's putting us in danger. We're putting the other guys in danger. That's our job. So we're not concerned about that. We mitigate it as we need to. Our commanders factor all of this, but the only ones that need to be worried right now are Iranians that think they're going to live.
I absolutely love the idea of how patriotic and confident we are in ourselves. I love the idea of that, but to say that there's no risk, it doesn't really make much sense here. Like, if our troop positions or movement positions are basically being exposed by Russia, then we can't say that we're like 100% sure nothing is going to happen. Under no circumstances can we go into this under the notion that everything is just going to go our way 100% of the time. Guys, I understand it. We're the United States of America. We have the largest military, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. But under no circumstances can we allow our bravado to completely get us blindsided.
You just heard the defense secretary say, yes, we're aware of Russian efforts to assist the Iranians on positioning the U.S. military assets. It's not a problem. We know all about it. How do you evaluate that answer and this Russian involvement?
Well, it's a very serious development, Major. The Russians, through their 4 years of war in Ukraine right now, have developed a very sophisticated apparatus of scanning through all the data collected by all the sensors out there and figuring out how to target individuals through that. So if they are supplying that kind of information to the Iranians, it's a concern. I take the Secretary of War at his word that our people are aware of that they are tracking that, but anything like that has to be taken extremely seriously.
So when you hear that, you do think to yourself, there is a higher risk profile now that we know this.
Absolutely.
Anytime you have a major power adversary like Russia coming in to assist the Iranians, that's a concern. The Russians, even though their progress has been halting in Ukraine over the years, have real capabilities on the targeting front as well.
So let's talk about the touchscreen. There's been a lot of conversation about interceptors. Help my audience understand why they're important, where they're important, and what else we should know.
So the United States military throughout the region, to include critically on this line of bases here that we have stretching from the northern part of Iraq through Kuwait, down through Qatar, Saudi Arabia, into the UAE and beyond, is protected by a multi-layered shield of air defenses. This is there because Iran, of course, has substantial ballistic missile and drone capabilities to strike our bases, but also civilian targets throughout the region. The issue that we faced at the start of this conflict was that the interceptors are very expensive. Now, Iranian ballistic missiles are also expensive, but the drones are very cheap. So there's a math problem when you're firing these very expensive interceptors at relatively cheap munitions. There's also just a quantity problem. Our reservoirs of these things, our magazines, are not infinitely deep. However, sitting here about 7 days into the start of this campaign, we actually seem to be winning the fight in the sense that we're not just, the United States military and its partners in the region are not just sitting there passively firing interceptors as missiles come in, but the United States military is also targeting the archers, shooting the arrows down, if you'll permit the metaphor, in midair, expensive, at times risky, going after the launchers, going after the missile storage sites in Iran, more straightforward. And over time, that's our doctrine, to hammer the archers. You see, as of yesterday afternoon, ballistic missile attacks from Saturday through Thursday down 90%, drone attacks down 80%.
And the secretary told me that tempo is going to increase because he said there is now supremacy over the skies of Iran. The Israeli Air Force and the American Air Force can go wherever it wants and can target more precisely from overhead as opposed from, let's say, the Med or someplace around here. Point one. Point two, he said the personnel here have enough interceptors. Our allies will have enough interceptors for not just bases, but the infrastructure, the oil infrastructure in that area.
That's right. It's holding for now. Now, you do see some of our allies and partners in the region getting nervous.
Yes.
These reserves of interceptors are not infinite. It was very interesting to see in the last day or so the development of the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, offering support to partners in the region, because who has experience shooting down Iranian drones? Ukraine has experience shooting
Ukraine.
down.
They were there.
Absolutely.
That's right. Iran supplies these drones to Russia, who fires them at Ukraine. Ukraine has very limited interceptors for a variety of complicated, largely political reasons. And so they've become very good at shooting down drones with drones, developing tactics to make the most out of the limited resources that they have. And they're now going to advise our partners in the region and us.
With all that we did to help Ukraine, I'm definitely glad that they're actually making a solid effort to at least advise us specifically on how to take down Iranian drones. Understand this here. We know how to do it, but it is incredibly expensive. And it kind of brings me back to what Mohammad Morandi said. And again, I don't want to keep having to mention this man, famed Iranian, propagandist, puppet of the Iranian regime. Understand this here, right? He basically said, hey, listen, we're going to throw out all of our cheap stuff and let you use all your expensive stuff. Yeah, that's kind of happening. Right. And I don't want to sit here and say that actually is coming to fruition here. I don't want to do that. I don't want to give him any credence.
There's new video from the U.S. Central Command. They say it shows Iranian targets being, quote, decimated by U.S. forces. The new push from the U.S. commander of CENTCOM, who's leading the charge in the Middle East, is to raise or level Iran's ballistic missile industry. Let's bring in CBS News Pentagon reporter Eleanor Watson. Ellie, before we get to what we heard from the admiral, you have some breaking news on Russia's potential involvement in this conflict?
Potential.
Multiple sources tell CBS News that Russia is providing Iran with information about U.S. positions in the region. A partnership between Iran and Russia is not necessarily new. We saw Iran provide hundreds of Shahed drones, the type of drones it makes, to Russia for Russia to use in Ukraine. But so far in this war, this is the first involvement of some sort of Russian information, and that brings in another party into this war that does threaten to expand.
Yeah, and now let's go back to the U.S. looking to, quote, raise or level Iran's ballistic missile industry. What is the next phase in this war?
Yeah, it sounds like the military is now not just focused on destroying Iran's current missiles and launchers, but focusing on not allowing them to make any more missiles. Admiral Cooper, in a briefing yesterday, said that the next phase will focus on, as you said it, leveling or raising Iran's ballistic missile production. Already, he said the U.S. has targeted hundreds of missiles and launchers, as well as sunk 30 Iranian Navy ships. Another objective the military has in this ongoing campaign. In that same update, Secretary Hegseth said, even though Iran hopes that the U.S. cannot sustain this war, the U.S., in his words, has enough offensive and defensive weapons to fight for as long as it takes. But as we were talking about before, it's not just the U.S. who has to worry about how long this fight goes on, but it's also the countries being targeted by Iran in retaliation.
The surrounding countries.
Admiral Cooper gave that number. The 12 countries have been targeted, and that includes some countries that CBS reported yesterday do have concerns about dwindling interceptor missiles to stop incoming Iranian attacks that have slowed over the past few days, but haven't stopped yet.
Like, a serious question here. How do you think the government is going to sell this to the U.S. population, like, of taxpayers that voted Trump in specifically for the idea of fixing the economy? Because war does not fix economy. It generally makes things worse. Think about your 401ks, your IRAs, your SEP IRAs, all of these financial products that basically utilize the market. How is that going to work, guys? I mean, so many questions here on that here. But the reality is that the countries that are definitely surrounding Iran cannot afford to sustain this for much longer than it is.
Admiral Brad Cooper said the number of Iranian ballistic missiles fired in the first 24 hours is down 90%. But Iran has a near limitless supply of Iranian Shahed drones, which are being targeted by cheap American $10,000 weapons, according to Brad Cooper. Separately, American Lucas one-way attack drones that have been reverse engineered by the U.S. military from Iranian Russian drones found on the battlefield in Ukraine are now hitting fixed targets in Iran.
This was an original Iranian drone design. We captured it, pulled the guts out, sent it back to America, put a little "Made America" on it, brought it back here, and we're shooting them at the Iranians.
Jeez. That's
The
petty.
U.S. has lost at least 3 MQ-9 Reaper drones over Iran, but much more significant are the direct hits to sensitive U.S. and allied radar installations across the Gulf. Videos from the first days of the strike show a satellite communications hub in Bahrain and Qatar taking direct hits. Fox News has confirmed that Russia is quietly providing intelligence to Iran to help with the targeting. This was first reported by the Washington Post. Russia's goal to prolong the conflict and drain valuable U.S. munitions, much like the U.S. has done by providing targeting intelligence to Ukraine after Russia's invasion. At CENTCOM headquarters yesterday, Admiral Brad Cooper said the U.S. had struck an Iranian drone carrier roughly the size of a World War II aircraft carrier. It was still on fire as the press briefing began.
Our strikes against the Iranian Navy have intensified. You may have heard the president say just a little while ago that we have sunk or destroyed 24 ships. That was true at the moment. We're now up over 30 ships.
Meanwhile, satellite imagery and verified videos show the girls' elementary school hit in Minab, Iran on Saturday was likely hit by U.S. precision munitions, along with 6 buildings at the neighboring Iranian naval base. Satellite images from 2013 showed the school inside the IRGC naval base perimeter, but images from 3 years later clearly show it outside the base. 180 school children were at the school at the time of the strike. More than 130 were killed. The Pentagon is still investigating.
I get it. The Pentagon is investigating it. We've been investigating it now for a couple of days now. That's going to have to be responded to, and I mean immediately, because the last thing, to be honest, I don't know what you can do about that. Okay. But you're going to have to do something. The United States government is going to have to do something about it. There needs to be a solid press release on it. There needs to be actual insight. I'm not sure how much investigating is going to be needed here, specifically if it has our signature. Let's just say this here on it. That was us who did it, and not some random group there who did it, and we're being blamed for it because they know, kind of by default. That is absolutely terrifying. Okay. Because I remember back in like maybe 2002, 2003, somewhere in that range there, where there was a saying that was going around. It was like trimming the grass before it grows. That immediately reminds me of that statement there. This has the ability to create a new IS. That instance right there, because understand this, because Mohammed Marandi, he is sitting on that statement. And to be honest, we would too, right? We would too, and anyone would. Any country's leader is going to stand on that story and say, look at what the big bad guys did, guys. Does it surprise me that Russia is doing this right now, though, guys? No, it shouldn't. I'm just waiting for news from China, guys. I mean, that's just kind of where I'm at on that story right there. I do think that China is going to make a play. I think the BRICS nations are all going to come together and start, doing all types of craziness. But we shall see here, guys. This is definitely becoming something that is larger than what I think any of us actually thought it was going to end up being. But again, hopefully we can figure out a way out of this scenario kind of as quick as humanly possible, without having to put like ground forces down. Because again, they have 90 million people, bro. They have difficult terrain. Okay. What is it? 650,000 ground troops. Guys, we don't have that many. We're not there. Okay. We're not there. Not in that region, at least, guys. When this started, I was like, oh no, not Iran. Iran is not Iraq, guys. Okay. It was never Iraq. Not like that. Iran is not Afghanistan. It's not. There's a reason why everyone hated them. Oh, guys, everyone hates them. Around them, but no one has done anything to them. What does that say to you? What does that scream to you? I mean, I get it. We're the US of A, right? I get it. America. I agree. Where's my flag at right there? I agree fully. I love my country. But I also know that we would have to mobilize in a way that is just going to be wild. And the only thing we could do would absolutely obliterate the idea of oil coming through the Strait of Hormuz. We will destroy that too. Right? The only thing that could be done, basically, guys, is the big one. That's basically it. That in my head, at least, right? I mean, we can lob missiles at them all day long, but they're not going to stop, right? They're fighting for their religion. That's their moral basis right there. That's it. They're fighting to maintain their religion, right? guys, I mean, this is just going to be a wild one, bro. While our allies are over there, not wanting us to utilize their bases. Allies, right? But I get it. This is preemptive. And that's what the clause is under most of the European Union's, guidelines, let's call them, right? This is a preemptive strike, and they're not going to back the idea of generally a preemptive strike. It would have to be something that has happened to you specifically. And this is why a good amount of them are calling it an illegal war and they're not stepping up, because it was preemptive by proxy, let's say, of Israel. But guys, we're going to follow the story, obviously, because guys, geez, dudes. But I just cannot wait for this to be over. Seriously.